What's up, guys, and welcome back to the Walkout Podcast,
where we cover fights, news, and more.
And today we'll be bringing you our own UFC pound-for-pound list, where we will be presenting the top 10 fighters, in our opinion, in all weight classes. And we'll be judging it off of factors like their results, their way of winning fights, and obviously how active they've been. So to start it off, who do you have at the number 10 spot?
So we have Umar Nurmagomedov coming in here at number 10 in our pound-for-pound rankings. And this was a difficult pick, this specific spot, the number 10 spot here, because it's one of the only places in this ranking where we don't have a champion, or we don't really have a possibility of having a champion here. And so we were looking both at previous champs and we were looking at mostly contenders in different divisions. And one of those that we have identified with maybe one of the highest chances of becoming a champ, or at least of one of the highest levels, is Umar. And the reason for that being both his record in his latest 3 fights with decent opponents and decent wins, quite dominant wins, except for one in which he faced Merab in a title fight, in which obviously he lost, but still we thought that fight, especially in the first 2 rounds, it was one of the only fights where I watched Merab and I thought that maybe he's losing this. So this was based both on his quality of his wins. He hasn't really gotten submissions or finishes, but he looks very secure when he's fighting, and he's been one of the only ones who's been able to go up against Merab, who's a very, very, probably, as you will see later in the list, one of the highest, best fighters in the UFC.
Yeah, quickly on that, I totally agree. And like you mentioned there, it's very hard to pick outside of the champions who is the best of the rest, so to speak. But I think, Umar is one of the most, in my opinion, most mature fighters in the entire UFC, even though he's quite new to the game. And obviously some of that knowledge he has taken from Khabib, and that's a huge advantage for him. And of course there are a lot of other names you could have put in here, but all in all, we've gone for Umar as our 10th pick.
Yeah, so moving on to the 9th spot on the list, we have Jack Della Maddalena. And the reason for this being that, because obviously he's a champion as of currently, but he's the lowest ranked champion on our list here. And the reason for that mainly being that the welterweight division is a very competitive division, and it's really difficult to say with his latest fights, his record, against he won the belt versus Belal Muhammad, but still it was a pretty close fight maybe, and we don't really know actually how good Belal Muhammad is.
No, that's true, yeah.
And we will see when he fights Islam what his level truly is, but for now we're thinking that all of the other guys on this list, they're just a level above currently, both in experience, a record, and in activity. Because Jack hasn't fought that often. He fought in May when he won the title.
Exactly. That's the only thing Jack Della Maddalena has going for him, in our opinion, is that he has looked very good. But as we mentioned, we have to judge him on their fights and the quality of the fights.
Yeah.
Moving on to our number 8 spot, we have the current heavyweight champion, Tom Aspinall, who of course got a no contest last time out against Cyril Gane. And he's our 2nd worst ranked champion here, purely because of the fact that he has been quite inactive over the last year and a half. Is it his fault? Not in my opinion, it's really not. He wanted a John Jones fight, and John Jones was sat out, and Tom Aspinall didn't really. He got to defend his interim title once against Curtis Blades, and he got a very, very nice win there. And speaking for himself, his resume really does. He has gotten first round finishes almost every time out, and done it in multiple different ways, mostly lately on knockout and technical knockout, but also a lot of submissions in there. We know that his jiu-jitsu game is on point, and all in all, he's an incredibly well-rounded fighter, and a devastating one at that. The only reason why we don't have him higher on the list is purely because of his record, because he has beaten everyone, but the heavyweight division in the UFC right now is quite weak, if we're going to be brutally honest. And that's not Tom's fault, but we can't put him higher than some of the guys just purely because of his record, right?
Yeah, no, I agree completely. It's, as you said, it's not his fault that the level of competition hasn't been high enough, but still, he hasn't been as active, and that's not either his fault. But what can we do, if you have other fighters on this list who have a bunch of really impressive back-to-back wins, and they're doing it every year, several times every year. And when we have a fighter like Tom, who, he has some very, very impressive, at least first-round knockouts as of late, or as in the latest couple of years, that still, maybe doesn't rank as highly as some other guys in the pound-for-pound list, when they have several wins this year alone, with some very dominant performances against tougher pound-for-pound competition, maybe. So, I agree, on quality alone, Tom Aspinall is maybe, in the top 3 at least in this list, but we're not going only on quality here. This is a current pound-for-pound list, so it's a different criteria.
Exactly, yeah. All right, moving on to our 7th spot then, we have Khamzat Chimaev. What do you have to say about him?
Yeah, so Khamzat Chimaev coming in at 7 here in our pound-for-pound list it's a difficult one with Khamzat, we feel, because Khamzat, similar to Tom Aspinall, he hasn't been, active in the latest couple of years, and that has more to do with himself.
Yeah.
That's not really, the UFC's fault. That has more to do with Khamzat himself, pulling out a fighter, being sick, or just not booking new fights. But his last 2, we can't deny the level of competition, and we can't either deny the dominance, you could say. Maybe the first one against Robert Whittaker, that's even more, he broke his teeth in, basically. That's incredibly impressive against a guy like Robert Whittaker, who blitzed him down. And then you have Dricus du Plessis, who if this was a ranking of, most entertaining fighters, before that fight, I would say Khamzat would rank highly here. Yeah. But after that fight, Khamzat is one of the worst fights I think I've seen this entire year, and that was there was a lot of hype for that fight beforehand. So for me, Khamzat is not as impressive as before. He's not the type of hype of the prospect that he was before, but he is more ruthless maybe now. He's more intelligent even. He knows that he can't strike with some of these guys, but he can wrestle them, and he can keep them down from the ground, especially with someone like Dricus du Plessis, who we all rated very, very highly before this. So, based on the last 2 wins alone, they are good enough to put him in this 7th spot. But there are other fighters above him who
deserve it more,
yeah.
Right? Yeah. Moving on to spot number 6, we have the flyweight champion of the world, Alexander Pantoja. And this is also one that's really hard, I believe, to put into this ranking, because Pantoja is one of the fighters who we believe has like the most well-rounded game. And I've previously said when we analyzed his fights that I believe that he can take a fight in any way he wants. He will seek out your weakness, just drag the fight there, because he's so well-rounded. He can do it all, right? And that's such an incredible strength in MMA. He's not a specialist in any one area. He can just take the fight where you're the worst and win it. And that's incredible, right? However, the reason why we don't want to put him higher than this is just because if you look at his actual resume, I'm personally guilty of overhyping it a bit, but when I looked at the names, we have like Kai Kara-France, it's an alright win. Kaya Sakura was his first fight coming from another championship. How good is he? We don't really know, but since fighting Pantoja, it hasn't looked great for him. Other than that, I mean, is it that good? Steve Erceg is really not all that. So Pantoja's ceiling, I believe, is really high, and if he were to fight some other guys, some better guys, I should say, he could do very, very well, we believe. But that's not what this list is about. It's about what have you done, not what could you do. Because if we're doing that, Tom Aspinall would maybe be first. So that's why Pantoja goes into place number 6 here.
Yeah, I agree completely with that argument for Pantoja. And, you know, as you said, it's a very difficult thing to rank. You know, he has so many wins in a row. And it's the same way, you know, with Aspinall maybe. It's not his fault that the level of competition doesn't match his skill level. But it's really, really difficult for us to argue that Pantoja should go higher than someone like, for example, Merab, who has more activity, much more activity, much more wins, much harder wins as well, against much better guys. So, and then also someone like Volk, who just has the experience and the resume and the quality, you know, beforehand, that you can't dispute that.
Yeah.
So for us, it's difficult to say that Pantoja should go higher than this, and we understand that some people might think differently, but we're basing this on the level of opponents as well, and the level of opponents isn't really there yet. We will see after Joshua Van, who is a very, very good prospect. He's a very good fighter, and if I would say that might be the hardest one for Pantoja in the last 2 years, maybe.
Yeah, totally.
Probably. And if he wins that, I think that then we have another statement from him to say that I have a really good winner on my resume again. And things might change after that.
Yeah, and just to add to what you said there, of course, it's not Pantoja's fault, but we have to try and be fair. And what we have done is we have given him some kudos for his activity at least, because to be honest, like Hamza Chimaev, his 2 wins over Duplessis and Robert Whittaker, in my opinion, they're better than anything Pantoja has. But we put Pantoja a bit higher just because he's been more active and showed a bit more quality as well. So at least we'll try to be generous. But you have to feel bad for him because, I mean, he even called out Demetrius Johnson recently, who's retired, just to get the big name on his resume.
Yeah.
Just because he wants something, because there's nothing in the flyweight division. He's completed it. But as you mentioned there, moving on down the list.
I think he should move up. If he wants that,
though.
He should really just move up and challenge himself. If he can go up a division and get some wins in the bantamweight division, which I think is a lot more stacked than flyweight, then we'll see. Yeah,
exactly. And as you said, he's, of course, extremely good. But as we move down the list, you'll see why we can't put him any higher. Yeah. And speaking of that, who do we have in place number 5?
In place number 5 of our pound-for-pound list, we have Alexander Volkanovski, and he is the current featherweight world champion in the UFC. And this one has also been difficult for us to think about, because, you know, we have seen arguments, as we talked about Pantoja beforehand, maybe, you know, Pantoja should be higher or lower, but the fact is that Volk's resume before his losses against Islam and Ilya are really good. That record beforehand, and then also the win versus Diego Lopez. I think that you have to look at a lot of people. I think maybe look past that win, but that's a really good win. It's a really decent win, and it's probably better than anything than maybe Pantoja has even lately. I think that pound for pound, Diego Lopez is a better fighter than Kai France or someone like Asakura. We don't know a lot of yet. We have only seen him fight once in the UFC. So based on that, we have Volkanovski at number 5 in our list.
Yeah, exactly. I can't really add too much. Expect a bit like you already mentioned, to be fair, but the fact that a lot of people would put Pantoja higher because of his activity, but the wins that Volkanovski have been able to string out, we really have to just, in our minds, he is higher than Pantoja, and you can disagree with that, and I can understand your arguments, but it's opinion, right? And just as you mentioned, Diego Lopez is, I totally agree, he's higher than anyone Pantoja has fought.
Yeah, and even if we're talking about like some of the losses, you know, I think that he put up a good, at least first round's performance versus both Ilia Topuria and Islam Makhachev in the first fight, when he went up a division. So we have to really look at the context of both the wins and the losses here, and the reality is that Volkanovski is just a higher level fighter almost, you have to say, I think.
Yeah, totally.
Based on the quality of opponents he's faced in both the losses and the wins, and the performances he's put up.
Totally agree.
So, moving on down the list, we have the number 4th ranked Alex Pereira, recently picked up a really good knockout first round win, winning back the title against Ankalaev.
Yeah, spectacular
Finish in that first round, only a couple of weeks ago actually. And that is mainly the reason why we have him so high on this list, both because of his previous record before that. We talked about Volkanovski before. Pereira is sort of in a similar position here. It's just one step higher almost. He has one loss. That's the latest one before before he won back the title. When he lost the title against Ankalaev. Before that, he had a lot of really good wins. Sure, he lost versus Izzy. That's a long time ago though now, almost. And he had a lot of really impressive wins before and since then. For example, against opponents like Jiri Prochazka, who I think anyone rates pound for pound in the UFC as at least a top 20 guy in the UFC, I would say at least. So for Pereira, it really is about the comeback, right? It really is about the comeback here that we have to focus on, and just the manner of the finish of the comeback as well, at the age that he is. So that is why, for me, he comes in at a number 4 spot here, just one spot of the top 3.
Exactly, and just as you mentioned with Ankalaev, that loss as well. A lot of people were saying at all this time when he beat Jamal Hill, Prochazka, Roundtree, everyone was saying, okay, but when you fight someone with a bit of wrestling experience, he will get found out.
Yeah.
Like Ankalaev, sorry. And when he did lose. And a lot of people were like, see, that's what we've been saying. He was never that good in the first place. And then to have that adversity and come back and not only win, but to smoke the guy in over a minute. And the most interesting fact in that fight, in my opinion, is when he touched Ankalaev the first time, like in a second, you saw the look on Ankalaev's face where it was like, oh, is this what it was? Maybe he was injured last time, because this power is something otherworldly. And just as you mentioned as well, I don't think we should sleep on Jiri Prochazka. He's, like I said, definitely one of the best guys in the light heavyweight division and one of the best guys in the entire UFC. And to beat him 2 times. One last point is the activity, because that's one of the major factors that we judge these fighters on when it comes to the pound-for-pound rankings. And, I mean, there's only one guy probably as a champion who's been more active than Pereira, and we'll get on to him soon. But his activity and how he stepped up to save events on short notice, I mean, it's just unreal from Pereira. And that's why he claims that number 4 spot.
Yeah, absolutely agree with that. So, coming in at number 3, we have Islam Makhachev.
And I can already feel the hate comments here as we put Islam, who was a long time sitting champion of the pound-for-pound rankings, at number 3. But once again, I sound like a broken record here, but we have to speak about activity. I know who's been bulking up right now to make this welterweight matchup happen, but how can you put him over the other 2 guys who we have in the rankings? You'll see when we reveal them. But you just can't. Even though he's amazing, he has had 1 fight this year, and that was in January, I believe. And sure, he will have one very soon.
Yeah, and also, we have to, sorry to interrupt you, but we have to pay attention to what that fight was. Renato Moicano. He lost to Benil Dariush.
That's insane.
Benil Dariush a couple of months later, and looked really bad. And he looked really bad against Islam as well, but I didn't think that, even within that fight, I think that, of course, it's Islam Makhachev. Of course, he's gonna smoke Renato Moicano, but that fight didn't do anything for me. I didn't see anything that I didn't expect. If Islam would have come out in the first round and did a flying knee or something and knocked him out, that's a different prospect. But that didn't really happen. It was exactly as we thought that fight would go. Of course, a dominant win, but not a spectacular win.
It can't really be a spectacular win against Moicano.
No,
so exactly, he had everything to lose. But as you say, that's a completely fair point. He hasn't had an impressive performance in quite some while, right? And that's something we have to take into account. And as we mentioned before, there are a lot of fighters in this list where we maybe put them at the wrong place just because we have to judge the fact of what have they done lately? What have the wins looked like? Not if the fact, maybe you believe that if Islam Makhachev fought Topuria, who would win. And if he did, we would have him at number 1. But he hasn't, right? And so we have to assess according to the receipts that we have, and therefore we believe that it's fair for Makhachev. And of course, stating the obvious here, but the fact why you see it at third, is just because of basically the Volkanovski wins and how he cleaned out basically lightweight. Although if he had actually fought Arman Tsarukyan instead of McCann as it was planned to, maybe we could have sat here and argued for him to be a bit higher. But he hasn't.
I agree with that completely. And, this list will change in the future. It's not a list that's set in stone. And there are events upcoming. And speaking of those events, we have Islam himself who's returning. And we will see if he will be a double champ, or at least a,
Two-division champ.
Yeah,
correct?
two-time division champ. So, yeah, that will surely put him higher. We can already say that.
Yeah, exactly. And moving on to guys who have upcoming fights, we have the bantamweight champion of the world. It's Merab, who of course has an upcoming fight against Peter Yan, a rematch. And that says a lot about how dominant he is, that he's just started to do round number 2 on these guys. He did O'Malley 2, now it's time for Peter Yan 2. He just keeps on beating the same guys because he's completed it. He's beaten everyone, so what's left to do? Beat him again. I mean, this guy is just insane. Not to throw allegations out there, but how he has his cardio levels as well is something that, I mean, he recently beat the takedown record, right? And it's just immensely, incredibly, I don't know, even find words to describe how incredible it is what Merab Dvalishvili is doing in the bantamweight division right now.
Yeah, it's certainly unique.
Yeah, it's so impressive. I mean, it's really hard to like find someone to challenge him. The only thing is if he would move up to featherweight, as he previously has said that he won't. But I mean, I don't even have any interest of watching him in bantamweight anymore, because I just think he's going to beat everyone. They said when he fought Sandhagen that maybe this kind of technical striker will give him issues. No, he fought Umar, who is on our pound-for-pound list, an incredibly well-rounded fighter with a lot of good grappling skill as well. He fought him pretty comfortable. I mean, find someone who Merab can't beat in the bantamweight division. Good luck. I mean, what do you have to say about him?
No, I agree completely with everything you're saying there. I mean, it's hard to understand just the level of dominance that he has in the bantamweight division. He is surely the bantamweight GOAT. Even if he would go out and lose, let's say in January or February, he would, because he's gonna eventually do a rematch against Umar.
Yeah.
And let's say he loses that one. Then he'd still be the bantamweight GOAT, I think, by a clear distance, simply because of how many wins he has strung together, especially in such a short time span. We're talking about 2 years here, and he's probably had like 7, 8 fights in 2 years, or 6, 7 fights maybe in 2 years.
Something like that.
Something like that, I think. And that's just incredible. And also, we can't look past the level of opposition also here. We have guys who all could have been and all have been, I think, on the pound-for-pound list. We have Sean O'Malley, who's definitely been there. He's a former champ. We have Petr Yan, who's also been there. And we have Umar Nurmagomedov, who's also been on the pound-for-pound list, I'm pretty sure, and who is on our pound-for-pound top 10.
Exactly.
So we're not, he's not just...
Cejudo,
yeah,
previous
Cejudo again.
Jose Aldo, one of the GOATs.
Yeah. I mean, now I'm just talking about basically the latest year. If you go back another 2-3 years, then it's laughable almost. It's hard to understand, and you can't praise him enough for that. I mean, even if he doesn't maybe always go out and knock him out in the first round, like someone like Ilya or Tom does, you have to just respect the grind, almost the level of dominance, the level of just energy. So many takedowns every fight. Is basically choking everyone out just with takedowns. And no one can find an answer to it. As
just drowning them. Yeah,
drowning them. And he's fought many different styles as well. He's fought Umar, who's very, he's very technical with his wrestling. We saw that versus Bautista, very dominant in his wrestling as well. And he's fought someone like O'Malley, who's long reach and technical striker. And then against someone like Sandhagen, who's maybe a bit more what would you say, well-rounded, but not as good. Maybe not that knocked out, not the same knockout threat. And then, as you said before, obviously guys like Jose Aldo and Cejudo, you don't even need to begin talking about their qualities. So,
I mean, what is this guy's kryptonite? I can't see it, and that's the sign of an elite fighter at the top level. Is how do you beat this guy? I can't see it. I mean, he's fought everyone. I thought it was going to be a striker, and as you know, I predicted Sean O'Malley to beat him the second time around because he's such a good striker, and Merab just had his way with him. I mean, it's totally insane. And the last thing I want to add, at least, is my favorite thing almost, when Dana White's face when he told the story at the press conference, where it was like, oh, Merab had his third title defense, it's amazing. And then Merab knocked on my door the other day and said, give me a fourth one this year. And it was like, sorry, what? I mean, 4 title defenses in a year, it's unheard of.
Yeah, that has to be a record, right?
Yeah, it is. And if he does that, I mean, maybe he takes the number 1 spot.
Yeah, actually, he might do. He might very well do that. And I think it's, the sky's the limit for Merab almost. And you can't see anyone beating him in the bantamweight division. And then, even if you look at the level, so the only thing that we can really say against him, and this also maybe comes into why we have another guy at number 1, is the fact that Merab is the most dominant in the history of the bantamweight division.
Yeah.
But is he the same in another division? Do we know that? Do we even, he doesn't want to step up. He doesn't want to take another guy, go down or something.
Exactly.
So that's the only thing, we have to really be grasping at straws here, because his dominance in the bantamweight division, it has to be respected. But you have to also look at everything on this pound for pound list. It's the best of the best we're talking about here. And when you have another guy who's ranked at number 1, who's coming up here, Ilia Topuria, who's a 2-time division, the only one currently, knocking out back-to-back, 3 back-to-back goats of the sport, almost, you have to say, right?
Yeah, totally. I mean, that's the guy who I think, no disrespect, of course, to Merab, but if he was to move to another weight class and beat someone, the only guy I wouldn't fancy him against is Ilia Topuria.
Yeah.
I mean, the guy is
or
just...
maybe Volkanovski. We don't know.
Maybe
if he has to step up.
Yeah, that's true. But I mean, if they're both the same weight...
Yeah, that's the truth.
Because
his in the weight.
Merab's skill and everything, it's incredible. But Ilia Topuria, I mean, what amazes me the most is, you remember the Charles Oliveira fight, and he put him in the crucifix.
Yeah,
and I was like, that's Charles Oliveira you're doing that to.
Yeah.
It's not only the striking. But speaking of the striking, he put Charles Oliveira out cold. He put Max Holloway out cold.
The first time ever.
He hadn't been knocked down before he fought him, and he has like 30 professional fights.
Yeah, and he has taken many strikes to the head.
Exactly. And you could argue that added up, but I don't really buy that. Because you've seen the receipts. You've seen him knock out Oliveira. You've seen him knock out, it hurts me to say, but Volkanovski.
Yeah.
And of course, Volkanovski came off that loss against Islam pretty recently before that fight. But still, the way he does it and how well-rounded it is, he has some great Greco-Roman wrestling as well. So I don't think you can... It's not like some people said with Pereira that, okay, put him in there with the wrestler.
Yeah.
Okay, put him in there with the wrestler and they're gonna get slept, is what I say.
Yeah, unless they're a really, really, really top-tier wrestler, which we don't even know. We haven't really seen him, against the top of the top. But as we know currently, everything you're saying is completely right. It's what we do know is that we do know that he put Charles Oliveira in a crucifix, and he did it relatively easily. He reversed him on the takedown, and that is insane. And he was basically the smaller guy. You could almost feel it during the fight that he didn't really have maybe the strength advantage yet. Maybe he was getting used to the lightweight division, but still he managed to pull that off mid-air, basically. Technical skill, everything's there. There's not much else to say really. Just that he's very, him and Islam, I look at both of them and I almost see a mirror. They're both from the Caucasus. They're basically mirrors of each other almost. Maybe, Islam is a bit more to the wrestling, Ilya's a bit more to the striking, but we don't know that yet. I really, really hope we get to see them fight, and that would probably decide for a long, long time who will be the top of this list.
Yeah, and maybe, possibly, can I say, the greatest UFC fighter ever.
Yeah,
because,
probably.
As you said, they're both pretty much perfect. I mean, when we talk about Ilia Topuria, if I were to design an MMA fighter myself on a video game, he's like, if you have it maxed out on every single stat, I mean, what's his weakness? I can't see it. Even,
No.
I mean, some people maybe argue cardio, but I'm pretty sure he knocked out Max Holloway in the, I think it was the 4th round, maybe the 3rd. He went a long way in that fight, and Max Holloway has some great cardio, and he was the one getting tired, not Ilia Topuria, even though he was controlling the fight. So I can't see any weakness. How do you beat him? I don't know. Maybe, do you think it could be the wrestling maybe from Makhachev? Is that the only thing, or?
Yeah, I think that the fact of the matter is that we don't really know yet. Actually, we don't really know. We just have to have that fight. Essentially, that's all we need from the UFC. They just need to make that fight. They need to make it tomorrow. They need to make it yesterday.
Yeah.
Just make it as soon as possible so we get the answer.
And then we have the number 1 guy on the pound for pound list for eternity.
We don't need to make the top spot. We don't even need to mention the top spot after that fight. I think
Exactly.
So that's our pound for pound list, current pound for pound list for the UFC top 10, and this list will change in the future. We will do it again, and I hope you guys enjoyed this. It was a great deal of work putting together this and thinking a lot about what's really important, deciding pound for pound skill and value, really, right?
Exactly. And please let us know your guys' thoughts on your pound for pound list. And like you mentioned, we will be doing updated versions in the future. But that's all from us. So thank you a lot for listening, and we'll catch you guys next time.
Yep, thanks, bye.